Chapter 1. Life in the Mountains. Pausing from his water carrying, Jung-sil lifted a hedge shrub and his field. The season had ripened, the hedgerows, the foliage that day lay scattered everywhere, rolling easily into his hand. The fully ripened, seasonal nuts split with a satisfying crunch between its molars. The clear sky looked as if it would crack open like a lot at the drop of a stone, blue as the back of a fish. Small clouds floated high, the clustering like scattered seashells along a beach. Though the sky on the high mountain should have seemed closer than from the village below, it felt just as distant, leaving him to wonder how far would I have to go to reach the end of that sky. From the valley, it had seemed close enough to touch once he reached the foothills, but on the mountainside, its autumn sky suddenly withdrew, retreating to an unreachable distance. The morning in the mountains is vast and still, like a slumbering beast, yet its breath is subtly alive. The gentle slope of the mountain resembles the back of a lasting ox, and though there's no wind, the aspen leaves tremble ceaselessly, as if they were the mountain's own breath. Among the many trees, the birds, dressed in pure white, is the first to catch the eye, a singular beauty in the mountain forest. No matter how carefully adorned, could human skin ever be so fair? Trees stand densely, but numerous than the villagers, and with a greater variety than family names. They grow quietly, flourishing without worry. Manchurian alders, oaks, oak trees, Quercus serrata, birches, Betula species, Quercus mongolica, bush clovers, and mano maples. In the valleys, there are Acer genulus, three-lobed crab apples, backed ones, the bristly fruit sumacs, and colophon-neck trees. Here and there, on the ridges are evergreen, fragrant pine trees, not pines, firs, and junipers, trees that grow steadily without a care. The mountains may be quiet, but they form a bustling, beautiful world. The fresh energy and scent of fruits, the fragrance of trees, the smell of earth, the scent of the sky. These were aromas nowhere to be found in the village. Jung-sil nestled under a blanket of fallen leaves and carefully crunching on the hazelnuts, was not consciously noticing their fragrance, observing the tree, or gazing at the sky. All of it had blended together, soaking into him fully, filling his entire body until he sensed it without even realizing. His body and the mountain had come together seamlessly. His eyes had somehow taken on the blue of the sky, and his skin absorbed the scent of the mountain. The leaves around him, softer than fires of straw at harvest, with layer upon layer of hazel, and oak leaves forming a soft bed, seemed to cradle him. Lying within them, he felt as if his body had become like a single tree, sprouting from the earth, one among the pines, oaks, and other trees around him. The 2 feet are roots, and the 2 arms are branches. If the flesh were cut, it seems that tree sap would flow instead of blood. He could clearly sense, though faintly, the subtle words exchanged in silence among the standing trees, the nodding gestures of the branches, and the whispers hidden in the leaves, as part of a single stem in the crowd. When the sun shines, they rejoice. When the wind blows, they dolor. And when the sky clouds over, they frown. One can clearly interpret the customs and secrets of the trees. The body is like a single stalk of a tree, suddenly feeling a powerful force. Jung-sil sprang to his feet. Energy coursed through all 4 of his arms and legs, making it feel as if he could soar into the sky at any moment. With nowhere to release the overflowing energy, he couldn't help but open his mouth wide and shout at the sky. It was a simple voice, but it carried the spirit of the mountains. The mountain responded, and the branches nodded. Another response came in the form of a sudden flutter, as a field of peasants burst into flight from the opposite mountain slope, holding the tail feathers of the plump hen in its beak. The cock pheasant's colorful wings shone brilliantly against the clear sky. Seeing the plump pheasant, Jung-sil suddenly felt hungry. He remembered the venison he had stored by the stream in the valley below, along with some wild honey wrapped in dry leaves. Picking up his sickle again, he decided he needed to fill his carrying frame with wood by midday, so he could reach the town before the market closed. After selling it, he planned to return to the mountain before dark. Since he had rested, his arms were full of energy. The rustling leaves sounded lively close to his chest, and his whole body felt refreshed as if it had been washed clean. Life in the mountains was much better than in the village. Coming to the mountains had been a good decision, he thought. Chapter 2. Fire. There's no work in the world as unprofitable as being a servant. He hadn't intended to start a fight. Later it was Old Man Kim who, with some hidden agenda, started an argument. Looking back now, it's clear he had planned to drive him out from the beginning. After 7 years of service, Jung-sil was kicked out of the house where he lived, with nothing to his name. He felt wronged, but not heartbroken. He had never once received his wages in full each year. He had never even given him a single decent suit of clothing. Even during holidays, he didn't bother to slip him even a small amount of money, leaving him to spend each one just like any ordinary day. The promises of marriage, a house, and a livelihood had all been empty words. The accusation that he had meddled with the mistress was absurd from the start. It was a fabricated scam, and he had no interest whatsoever in even the most unattractive woman. There was no reason for suspicion just because he had met the mistress on the way back from doing laundry outside the village and had walked back with her, carrying a load of firewood ahead of her. The suspicious man fooling around with the mistress was actually elsewhere, and the old man ended up taking out his misplaced anger on poor Jung-sil. In truth, it did seem pitiful, always upset by the tricky mistress's behavior, but unable to control her. Thinking about the even more tangled future ahead, Jung-sil chose to live instead. Under the vast sky, he had nowhere to go. The place he felt closest to was always the mountain, where he used to go to gather wood. He recalled the taste of the leaves, soft and thick, unlike the rough bundle of straw, marked by hard work and daily life. It didn't seem as if that best word would betray him. With only an empty A-frame carrier on his back, he headed into the mountains. It was also a test to see how long he could endure there. Even Bakjun was a deep, secluded place, and this mountain valley lay about an hour's walk further in, far from any village or people. The hills were white, and the sunny side was well lit by the sun. The stream flowed through the valley, and the trees along the stream were abundant with fruit. Many times he had come to this sunny spot to cut wood and had taken a nap there. By the stream, he would light a fire and roast ears of corn he had picked from the field. He filled his stomach with the wild kiwi fruit he found in the bushes, along with the ripened hawthorn berries and crab apples from the branches. His sleeping spot, nestled deep in a pile of leaves, wasn't too cold. The next day, while wandering through the mountains, he happened to find a beehive hanging low on a giant tree branch. He used tobacco smoke to scare the bees and skillfully took the hive. Inside, it was filled with clear honey. It seemed that fate hadn't abandoned him just yet. Even a little honey was enough to keep him going. It became sustenance for several days for him and a dog he had brought along. The night before last, with some honey still left, he saw a wildfire on the distant mountain opposite him. Bright red flames, like crepe myrtle flowers, lodged close against the darkness. It had started burning during the day, but was only discovered by nightfall. The fire seemed to flicker and fade like mulberry leaves eaten by silkworms. Yet in truth, it kept burning stubbornly, refusing to go out. The flame flickered like a tongue of a hungry beast, yet they were beautiful in their own way, more splendid than the flowers under the fence, finer than silk, and more vivid than a rainbow or a coxcomb. Filled with a strange excitement, Jung-sil grabbed a stick and climbed up the ledge. Crossing the valleys, as he was drawn towards the burning site, it was much farther than it had seemed up close. The fire spread from one ledge to another, burning down into the valley. The heat flared up, making it too hot to get close. Waves of warmth pulsed through the air. The roots of the trees snapped and popped from the heat of the fire, making the ground tremble. The slender birch trees caught fire on every branch, turning each one into a blazing coral like tree. Each tree falling away felt like such a waste. Jung-sil, with no other option, swung his body aimlessly, circling the edge of the fire. The fire was more than he could manage. Still, his efforts were not in vain. He managed to get a sculpted deer. The deer, unable to break through the fire's edge, circled helplessly in the mountain hollow, and alternatively met its fiery end. By the time Jung-sil got it back, dawn was breaking, and the fire was almost out. The lone animal looked pitiful, but since it was already dead, Jung-sil carried it back up the mountain. He could simply think of it as God's will to save a life, and that was enough to satisfy him. It became a comforting source of food for many days. Yet, there was one thing he missed: the salty taste. Salt. He didn't miss people, but he longed for salt. His heart yearned solely for the thought of obtaining it. Chapter 3. Sword. He loaded as much firewood onto his carrier as he could manage, working the 8-mile path diligently. Sweat began to soak his back. With each step, the load of firewood swayed forward. He barely made it in time before the market closed. Never had he felt such joy in selling wood as he did that day. Never had he felt such joy in buying goods as he did that day. It was because these were things he truly needed. With the money from selling the wood, Jung-sil bought a sack of potatoes, a measure of millet, salt, and a pot. He thought this would be enough for a quiet life in the mountains. He thought, what does it matter if you live without household items? As the baggage decreased, compared to when he came, The load on the A-frame carrier became lighter. The loud arguments coming from the bar's back room were just as noisy as before. What was strange, though, was that the busy life on the streets didn't interest him at all. He didn't really miss the tired faces of the people. Why did he miss the mountains so much? He wondered if it was just his own stubbornness. But there wasn't much reason behind it. He just liked the sunny hills, thought the birch trees looked nice, and felt drawn to the oak leaves. Maybe he was meant to live in the mountains his whole life. He wasn't curious enough about old Mr. Kim's whereabouts to ask anyone, but he happened to hear a snippet from Mr. Park, whom he met on the street. Apparently, the unattractive mistress had finally run off with Mr. Che, escaping old Mr. Kim's watchful eye. They were still searching for her whereabouts, but no one had any clue. The image of a 60-year-old man tossing and turning in the main room, unable to sleep, suddenly came to mind. He probably regretted kicking out the innocent servant. But Jung-sil had no thought of moving back in, nor did he feel any kindness to comfort the old man. It only made the bustling life of the streets seem even more chaotic. The evening path leading to the mountains felt all the more depressing. Chapter 4. Star. By the time he finished his evening meal, clumsily prepared over a pot hanging by the stream, the night had grown quite dark. Stars sparkled in the deep sky, and the crescent moon tangled itself among the tree branches. The birds had nestled in. The wind was still, and only the gentle murmuring of the stream breathed on. The dark mountain ledge looked like a sleeping ox. The stone fire crackles and sparks. The smell of burning leaves warmly wraps around him, filling the air with a rich, oily scent. Sitting by the fire and smoking his pipe, he feels warmth spread through his body. His heart feels content, as though he couldn't ask for anything more. A single desire sprang up within him. Cooking rice isn't a job for a sturdy young man. A man's work is plowing the fields and gathering wood. If he were to marry, there'd be no better bride than Union, who lived in the neighboring house when she lived in the village. He thought that bringing her to the place where he lived to handle the cooking would be the best solution. Just thinking of Union brought him joy. His plans unfolded one by one with ease. He would cut thick logs, chop them into sections with the bark still on, and stack them in a sunny spot to build a modest little cabin. He planned to clear a wide slope on the mountainside to make a field, where he would plant potatoes and oats, starting in the spring. He would set up an enclosure in the fenced yard to keep goats, pigs, and chickens. If he managed to catch a deer alive in the mountains, he would raise it in the enclosure as well. While Yunya took care of the household, he would work on the fields and gather wood. If they had children, they would grow up strong as oxen, sturdy as the mountains. And if the Yunya didn't agree, he'd simply go down at night and quietly carry her away. Once she entered the mountains, there was no other choice. The fire was nearly extinguished, and the sound of the stream grew even clearer. Stars flickered in a dizzying pattern. The moon was caught in another tree branch. When he stamped out the remaining embers with his foot, the valley felt even more desolate. It was impossible to tell the time in the mountains. Time had no meaning. Not knowing whether he was early or late, he headed toward his place of peace and rest. He immersed himself entirely in the thick pile of leaves, like a stack of harvested grain, leaving only his face peeking out. Gradually, his body began to feel warm. The stars in the sky seemed to come close enough to spill over his face, then drift away again. One star warned me. 2 stars to me. 3 stars dream me. As he counted, Jung-sil felt as if his body itself were melting with the stars.